How's it going? We have a few people on here today. We have Beagold, aka the water propaganda expert. How's it going, Beagold?
Water types are good in this cup.
Well, we're going to find out soon. We also have T. Wastel, not on the propaganda train, but he'll be shutting down any kind of propaganda he sees. Say hello, Tristan.
Hey guys.
And I'm very excited to have Jay Devon also on here. He's got about a week of head start looking at this meta. He put out a really nice video very recently on this cup. How you doing, Jay?
Doing pretty good, dude. Glad to be here with you all.
Yeah, so this should be fun. The TImless cup is a bit of a different sort of spice, the different little bit of a flavor for a themed cup. The theme is basically nostalgia. So the first step on any TImless cup team will be picking one of the original starters from Kanto, Johto, Hoenn, or Sinnoh, otherwise known as the first 4 generations. That being said, it can be any evolution stage of those. So, for example, you could pick Charmander, Charmeleon, or Charizard, but not all 3. And once you've gone through those, you have some type restrictions. So it could be any eligible Pokemon out of those first 4 generations. And there are quite a lot of hefty restrictions, right? Fighting is not allowed. Neither is normal, fairy, flying, steel, or psychic. Umbreon and Sableye are specifically banned. So are legendary, mythicals. And if that wasn't enough, Alolan and Galar. So none of those recently caught Weezings with tackle. You're not allowed to use them either. And so the biggest question is, well, if flying isn't allowed, am I allowed to use Charizard? Well, yes, because the starters are exempt. So there's a lot more bans than there are in previous cups. And that does allow for a very sort of flexible, very team build oriented cup format. First look, what do you guys think of this so far? It's kind of exciting, right?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, there's definitely that nostalgia factor, and then it just seems a lot. I mean, it might be a little centralized on a couple mons, but it still seems a lot more diverse than the Ferocious Cup we just had. There's a lot of more variety and more team building that can go on. So I'm pretty excited about that. And yeah, like you said, the starters are the exception to those type rules, which is interesting because you have Charizard as the only eligible flying type, Blaziken is the only eligible fighting type, and Empoleon as the only eligible steel type. So those add some interesting wrinkles for sure.
I guess technically you could use your Infernape. Even though
I guess
it's not very good. What do you think, Jay? You've had about a week or so far to take a look at it. Are you liking the diversity so far of this cup?
I really am liking the diversity. I think, especially since, everything seems basically centered and focused around the starter picks. It really is going to be important. Just like you were saying, Blaziken, I think hands down is going to be a very, very strong pick. I think I've already slept on Blaziken a little bit. The Charizard with the resistances, it's really going to be focused around the starter, and that's where you're going to be able to exploit weaknesses of other supporting rosters that have, I guess, suboptimal grass users for support. Like we mentioned, Swampert can be a very strong pick. I'm still a fan of Blastoise myself. Well, you want some coverage for those, and the coverage is going to be easily exploited depending on your starter, essentially.
Sure.
So Jay, you think that in team building, you think the way to go is to start with the starter and go from there? Is that what you're saying?
Not necessarily. I think a lot of strategies again would be focused around what starter you're going to pick and what starter you use. But there definitely is like a core meta within the restricted picks themselves that, definitely should be on a team. I mean, I think Mud Boys, no matter what, are going to be very common. You can't hear me? Let me pull this closer. I think Mud Boys will be pretty common. Quagsire, obviously, and Wishcash. I think those will be super common. I feel like Lantern definitely will be. I feel like it might be a little overpowered with all the grass presence, but No, aside from the starter, there's definitely a core meta, but I feel like the starters are where the strategies would come into play.
That's interesting because I haven't looked into the meta too much yet, but I've kind of thought about picking my starter a little later in the team building process, like not picking a starter till maybe the third or fourth pick. To me, it seems like the meta is kind of centralized around Lapras and the dragons a little bit.
Oh yeah.
So I think, at least to me, it seems like you start with your Lapras, or maybe a Celio, maybe both, and then you pick one or two dragons, and then from there you look for your Lapras counter, whether that be like a Lantern, a Razor Leaf, or a Grass starter, and then I think at that point you can maybe start filling in a starter if you didn't already pick a Grass starter.
Well,
I feel like the starters would be kind of fillers then, almost like the starters would be flex picks.
Yeah, in a sense, it just seems to me like Lapras is just so good here, because it can beat or check most of the starters, and is fairly safe against a variety of the meta, where a Charge Beam Lantern and a Razor Leaf user are really the only things that can beat a 2-shield safe swap Lapras. So I think really nailing down those Lapras counters is going to be pretty important. And then again, the dragons are quite good here too, because dragon resists water, fire, grass, and electric. So like Dragonair is going to be resisting the main types of all the starters. So I think those are really looking to be the building blocks, and then you kind of go from there.
there is an interesting comment in chat from Chief Buddington, and his approach to team building has kind of been choosing a team without starters and then plugging in a starter that would just make it stronger. Because you have to pick a starter, right?
Do you have to pick a starter?
Yeah.
You do have to pick a starter.
Okay.
And I'm going to be taking a slightly different approach because it is the Timeless Cup and it's based on nostalgia. I'm actually going through all of my save files from all the previous games and building my teams around those first. So they may be slightly off meta, but it's what worked for me years ago. And yeah.
I see a X Factor asking about Charge Beam or Water Gun and Lantern. Normally, I've always been a Water Gun proponent. I've always bashed Charge Beam. Haven't really thought it was good in any previous meta. But with how centralized Lapras seems to be here, it seems like Charge Beam might have some play. Because that is one of the very few answers to a 2-shield safe swap Lapras.
Mm.
But like Chief Buddington said, it does depend on the team comp. But just, I guess if you stack the rest of your team against Lapras, you can probably go with Water Gun instead. But just that Lapras threat, I think, really calls for Charge Beam here.
So I think there's a lot of ways that we could sort of tackle how to start this, but as the word implies, probably best to start with the starters themselves. For those of you who are new to Pokemon, this is the kind of debate that can get pretty heated on which the best starter is, which is your favorite, which one you chose. Obviously, anybody who doesn't choose Charmander in the original is wrong, but it is what it is, right? What do you guys think? What starter are you eyeing on for this cup to settle in your 6, if you had to choose right now? We'll go with B-Gold. I know it's going to be one of the waters.
Surprisingly, it may not, but before I pick the actual starter, I'll make the choice easy for everybody that's watching on stream. Stage 1 Pokemon, don't use them. Stage 2 Pokemon, aside from potentially Ivysaur and Bayleaf, the others don't really have much use, and Marshtomp. And of the Stage 3 Pokemon, Torterra would be outclassed by the other ones, and Sceptile seems like a weak pick. So, with that in mind, Grass really has 2 options versus Fire's 3.5 if you count Infernape.
3? Are you thinking Fernape and Typhlosion are viable here?
Typhlosion has Shadow Claw to charge up Blast Burn slightly quicker. Whereas Infernape could be the additional fighting type damage, even though it is glassier than Blaziken. It's not Sceptile level
if you
bad.
had to choose, like let's say your tournament was tomorrow and you had to start practicing right away, which one would you go with if you had to make a team right now for starters?
Probably Swampert.
Swampert.
If I can get the right moves on it. But yes.
All right.
Water type, what a surprise.
It's funny. At the beginning, he said, I don't know, I might forgo the water, but then if you corner him, he'll always go back to the water. Tristan, what about you? What do you think you'd pick for your starter?
I mean, Swampert seems quite good, but at the moment, I'm leaning towards either Venusaur or Meganium, probably. I'm interested in potentially running like a double grass strat with one of those Vine Whippers plus a Razor Leaf user, potentially. So I'd probably look to pair like Meganium with a poison type Razor Leafer, such as Gloom, Victory Bill, and then, or I'd look to pair Venusaur with a non-poison type Razor Leafer, such as like Ludicolo or a Balm of Snow or a Blossom.
Fair enough. That's an interesting approach. Double grass. I haven't looked into it enough to say whether that is good or bad, but that is interesting how you're going for the grass types there. What about you, Jay?
So I mean, I still like Blastoise. In my little bit of testing with Blastoise, I feel like it's a hard pass at this point. I tried to make it work, and like we discussed with dragons basically being so dominant, as well as Lapras. And I think so far, at least for me, it's been pretty common to see those two right next to each other in a team of three, right? So the Blastoise, I mean, that's he really gives you nothing to work with there. With that being said, really right now, I mean, it's kind of between three. I'd either go Meganium, Blaziken. If I were to go Charizard, I might actually consider an Air Slash Charizard.
Would you consider the double legacy variant?
If I had a double legacy, yes.
Why not Fire Spin?
I feel like there's already enough right now that can answer the grass. Especially considering Ludicolo, I think is going to be pretty popular. But having that Air Slash, right? If there's going to be waters all over the place, you're going to deal super effective to the grass. Period with Air Slash, and you can at least deal consistent neutral to the waters, to the Mud Boys, even to Blastoise. It feels
and to the other fire types too.
Yeah, and to the other fire types. But even then, I mean, I still feel like I'm leaning Blaziken at this point. For me, I'd go Fire Chicken, 100%.
Why Blaziken? What do you see that you like about Blaziken?
The mad counter damage in a Lapras matchup, and assuming they're running Ice Shard, I guess it's a pretty assumptive way to pick Blaziken, but I think for the most part, we're going to see Ice Shard Lapras. He's going to dominate that matchup. Granted, you're definitely going to have to use the shield with how energy efficient Ice Shard is, or Surf is, and then Ice Shard getting, what is it, 4? I think 4 Ice Shards to get a Surf, if I'm correct, 4 or 5.
It happens pretty quick.
Yeah, he does it so quick, and if he survives that matchup and he counters down and they only have a grass left, and you've got 1, maybe 2 Blaze Kicks good to go, then that's super clutch. Could be. I haven't really tested it too much, but I got good feelings about Blaziken.
Yeah, that's interesting. So nobody liking the resistance to Dragon with Empoleon, for example?
No.
Okay.
I mean, that's all it really offers.
Yeah.
It's just, it doesn't even have a Hydro Cannon yet. That waterfall's real slow. But I mean, Empoleon is interesting. If the meta does become quite centralized around Lapras and Dragonair, Empoleon does decently well against both of those two. But at the same time, I believe Meganium also does pretty well against those two. So
fair enough. I'm, honestly, like I haven't had enough time to look into any of this in depth, but the allure of Charizard being the only flying type Flying generally does pretty well almost in any meta. Dragon Claw obviously spams pretty quickly, and we're seeing that Dragon is just about unresisted. Just looking at everything, and then of course Blast Burn hits pretty hard. So I don't have a wing attack Charizard, so I just default to the Fire Spin. But it seems like you would want to pick something that would be doing something unique within within the starter group, as opposed to Venusaur, for example, being somewhat substitutable by, let's say, Victory Bell or Gloom. Swampert being somewhat substitutable with its water ground typing by Whiscash, or perhaps if you wanted to run, I don't know, even Lapras has that Surf coverage, and it gets to it pretty quickly. It's similar to Hydrocan, even though it hits not as hard. I don't know. It seems like Charizard is a little bit more unique when it comes to just looking at the starters, and that's why I kind of agree with Blaziken as well. Like, both of those fire types seem very, very unique.
I'm just not sure what Charizard's flying typing is really helping you with here. I mean, I guess it gives you an extra resistance to grass, but fire's already resisting grass.
Well,
And there's not many fighting.
So much more farmable, right?
And
Yeah.
also you're making it neutral to ice instead of resistant.
Yeah, that's true. That's just a gut feeling, right? I mean, who knows what ends up happening once you get deeper into the meta. Removal of fighting types certainly is something that we haven't seen as much in the past. I ran a few sims on seeing whether my Legacy Omastar was going to be good or not. Probably not, but it would be interesting.
Some people in chat are talking about Sudowoodo.
Yeah, okay. Let's talk about Sudowoodo.
What do you guys think about the Rock Boy? It has counter, I know. I believe
Counter,
Rock
Stone
Slide
Edge,
and
and
Earthquake. Oh, it's Stone Edge. Okay. But yeah, how do you guys see Sudowoodo stacking up in this meta?
I feel like it's cheese.
Jeez. Well,
Says Mr. Kangaskhan.
it's weak to grass.
Straight up.
It's weak to water.
It's weak to water. It
Weak
resists
to ground
fire.
also,
Yeah. That's
but it's dealing almost widely unresisted counter damage, even if it's not stab.
True.
and rock in its charge
Yeah.
moves. I mean, Rock Slide and Stone Edge are pretty solid charge moves.
It'll hit like a truck. You know, if they don't shield like we saw on a Dragonair, it'll TKO. But with just so many weaknesses, I feel like it doesn't really deserve a slot. It's still in my current, 6 or whatever, but no. So
Well, and the other problem is like the main thing that's weak to counter damage is Lapras, which is hitting it back for super effective with Surf.
Mhm.
There's not a ton here that, in my opinion, looks to be meta relevant. That's going to be weak to fighting. Like Lapras and Celio are the main two.
I feel like he's a double-edged sword.
And then someone's asking, would you do Quag or Whiscash as your mud boy if you're not picking Swampert?
It's almost like Quagsire is several different options depending on what the charge moves is.
Right.
Because you could run Sludge Bomb, which is, I think it's the fastest move that Quagsire has available.
Is that faster than Stone Edge?
I think it is. I think it comes out barely
Different
faster.
things.
But anyway, it has Stone Edge, of course, which is great for coverage. It has Earthquake, which hits really hard with its, especially with its stab. Acid Spray is super annoying. So, it has a lot of options. And then whereas Cash, very popular pick in the past, Blizzard hits really, really hard. And then you have obviously Mud Bomb. So that combination is pretty much the only set that you'd run. I don't see anybody running. What is it, Water Pulse that it also has? Or
Yeah, it's
Gun?
Water Pulse and Water Gun, yeah.
Yeah. Like at that point, best run something else if you're going to run Water Pulse.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that Blizzard nuke from Whiscash is kind of nice, especially with a lot of grass types figuring in. But
And the dragon.
It's hard to get there, given that I don't think Whiscash has a ton of like farmable matchups here. So it's going to be hard for Whiscash to farm up the energy for a Blizzard. And then obviously the other nice thing is Quagsire having that super effective Stone Edge for the Lapras or the Celio is kind of nice. I guess I'm not seeing Whiscash be that useful. I think I would go Quagsire if I had to choose between the two. And then obviously Swampert is a nice option, having that Earthquake or a Sludge Wave as a coverage move. I mean, the Mud Boys are definitely going to be good here, but I don't think they're necessarily like essential on your team because I think Lanturns, the main thing they're going to be countering here. You don't necessarily need a Mud Boy because there's not much else they're countering that I can see, at least from like a first glance.
I can definitely agree with that. I mean, especially given, Mud Bomb, what is that really going to be, doing you a lot of favors against? You're going to see a lot of grass, a lot of water. We have the dragons. Blizzard, I think, might just be too expensive. If I were to run a Mud Boy, I definitely feel like I would go Quagsire. Probably even do the Sludge Bomb Stone Edge.
So you're not an Acid Spray shenanigans guy?
Usually I am, yeah. You never know, I could have Acid Spray Sludge Bomb. You don't know what I'm going to run.
That's why you build different Quagsires with different movesets.
Yes.
Man, if you had Sludge Bomb and Acid Spray, like, I'd be furious. You know what I mean? Like, you land a Sludge Bomb, I'm like, okay, it's not going to be Acid Spray. I'm going to shield the next thing if it's, super effective or whatever. Because it's going to hurt no matter what, blah, blah, blah. And then you Acid Spray me right there. I'd definitely not expect that. That's like...
with Acid Spray.
That's just up there with, like, Victory Bell. Just running, what was it, Sludge Bomb and
Acid Spray Sludge Bomb.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Victory Bell that I've got.
And then we have a Wrangler asking what we think about Politoed.
Man, I might try it.
Yeah, Legacy Politoed has Earthquake. So it has Mudshot, Surf, Earthquake, which is almost like a budget Swampert if you have the Legacy. So yeah, what do you guys think about Politoed?
Surf paired with a move like Mudshot comes out super, super fast. I experimented a lot with Politoed back in, what was it? Rainbow?
Was it Rainbow? It was probably Rainbow.
Rainbow, just to see if it could pair with Quagsire or substitute it. And in that meta, it didn't, but it might be useful just to be able to get to that Surf really, really quickly. And you can beat Lapras prior to Skull Bash, at least, landing those Earthquakes. That being said, I haven't messed around with it since, and now that Lapras has Skull Bash, I don't know if you'd necessarily count it as a counter to it.
Do you guys think Skull Bash is the way to go, or would you guys see any play for, say, like a Dragon Pulse Lapras?
Yeah, I think Skull Bash, man. It just seems like it'd be so good here, right?
In general, yeah.
Skull Bash.
Especially
that's definitely what I'm leaning towards. The main consideration for Dragon Pulse, I think, would be like Dragonair and Kingdra matchups potentially. But especially I think overall Skull Bash is probably better. What was that, Jay?
In that case, wouldn't you rather just use an Ice Beam though?
Well, Kingdra though.
Would you go with Skull Bash Dragon Pulse?
You can't go Skull Bash Dragon Pulse.
You need Surf. You can go Skull Bash Dragon Pulse. It just wouldn't turn out well for you because you want that Surf damage.
Yeah,
but Jay, I think the main considerations that Dragon Pulse would give you over Ice Beam would be the better Kingdra matchup, and as well not doing as terribly in the mirror. Because Ice Beam is pretty helpless in the mirror match.
What about Water Gun Lapras?
No.
Just no.
Oh, man.
Just shut me down.
I mean, if you're expecting a lot of people to do what Jay's doing and go for Blaziken to help shut down Lapras, then Water Gun could work. But part of the appeal of Lapras is the energy gain from Ice Shard, letting it spam off those surfs, as well as having that super effective damage for the grass types.
And the dragon types too.
Oh yeah, and the dragon types, that's right. And then what do you guys think about ghost types here? Because, Umbreon and Sableye are both banned. So there's not a ton of good ghost types, dark types. I think Skuntank and Drapion are the main ones, but they're probably going to be running Poison Jab and Infestation, if I had to guess.
Or Ice Fang.
I guess Ice Fang, yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. But yeah, how do you feel about ghost types in this meta? Because there's not a ton that resists them with so few dark types and normal types banned.
Well, the first ghost type we'd have to look at would be Frostlass, which would be an ice type and a ghost type. And that the Avalanche is what you're mainly using, but late game with shields down, Shadow Ball is unresisted by everything, or if not everything in the meta, outside of those two dark types. Because normal is banned as well. So
yeah, exactly. And for those two dark types, you have the Avalanche. I think Frostlass does struggle a little with Lapras. That would be one of the bigger drawbacks. And it's honestly not that great against grass types either. But it's definitely an interesting pick. And then another one to note is Haunter, which is actually ranked 9th overall on the PvPoke rankings for this cup.
Really?
Yeah.
With all ghost.
Yeah, Shadow Claw, Shadow Punch, Shadow Ball.
And that's mostly as a... What's ranking it high is as a lead and as a defender?
I'm not sure. Let me see if I can pull it
yeah,
up.
it's a lead and defender.
Shield.
Yeah, lead and defender, yep.
So defenders would be...
when you have a shield, then they don't.
Yeah. So I take that one with a little bit of a grain of salt.
It's not bad as a closer either, it looks like. And could potentially also function as like a solid safe switch.
Mm-hmm.
Getting a couple Shadow Claw energy lead before they counter switch you. Obviously, you'd have to watch out for like a Venomoth. But yeah, I think Haunter could be interesting here. And then the other two ghosts to talk about that people probably have from Sinister now would be Dusclops and Banette.
Yeah, Dusclops, some people in chat were talking about how it has access to Ice Punch, which is useful for that dragon coverage. The problem I have with Dusclops, outside of like a really concentrated meta, is that it doesn't really have a super hard-hitting charge move.
Yeah, it can tickle things because it's pretty pretty bulk weighted.
Yeah.
So the low attack stat and having no hard hitting charge moves definitely hurts its damage output.
Yeah. It's just to circle back and answer a question from chat, whether Shadow Ball is needed. A bit early to say, but I'll share with you what PvPoke says. Shadow Punch being at 48.9% usage, Legacy Shadow Ball being 37.5%, and then Sludge Bomb 13.5%. So it does look like the triple ghost moveset on Haunter, the Legacy Haunter version, is the quote-unquote best. Dark Pulse being 0%.
But the thing is, I feel like you could definitely use a Sludge Bomb Haunter because the steel types are banned. There's not a ton here that is resisting poison. It's mostly just going to be ground and rock types that are resisting poison. And it doesn't seem like there's a ton of those that are meta relevant. So I think you could definitely use a Sludge Bomb Haunter, but having that Shadow Ball that hits a little harder can be nice.
Gengar is also number 62. So I don't think we're going to be
62.
I don't think we're going to be seeing very many.
But Fates was mentioning that Banette is ranked 20.
Yep, that
You
return.
think Banette? Yeah. What do you guys think about that?
Brandon? Shadow Ball in return is a pretty powerful combo. Puts a huge amount of shield pressure with Shadow Claw. but it is pretty frail, and it doesn't want to be taken neutral. And that's pretty much, since counter isn't around and normal is banned, and it's not like very many things would be taking normal for the fast move. Would Bennett ever be taking neutral or resisted outside of bug?
Poison.
Poison, I
And the
guess.
psychic types also.
Well,
Well,
psychic does neutral.
Right. Other way around.
But yeah, I mean that is a problem that it would be taking mostly neutral damage here. The one nice thing though is that, like we said, there's not much that's resisting normal type here. So that return would be hitting for neutral on most targets.
And what are you guys thinking about the triple cast form? Which one would be used? Which one wouldn't?
For cast form, I think the fire cast form has been
Sunny.
predominant, right?
Yeah.
Cast form.
I find it hard to justify running the snowy cast form when you have like Lapras, Celio, and even Frostlass available. The fact that it doesn't have any coverage moves puts it in a tough spot, especially with how prevalent Lapras and potentially Celio are going to be. The fact that Lapras and Celio double resist ice means that they can basically just tank anything you throw at them. So I don't think Snowy cast form's in a great spot. Rainy cast form could see some play, but I feel like Lantern is going to be generally better here. But Sunny cast form is definitely the most interesting of the three. I think Sunny cast form along with Kanto Ninetales are going to be the best replacement options if you don't pick a fire type starter. Obviously, Torkoal has maybe some closing potential, but I think it's really going to be Sunny cast form and Kanto Ninetales that are going to serve as those grass and bug counters if you don't pick Charizard or Blaziken.
What about Camerupt?
Oh dear God, we're gonna have to deal with this again.
I think that you should run Camerupt in your ranked cup and let us all know how it goes.
Well, it is rank 169, so it's pretty good.
Oh man, Camerupt every single time it's eligible, it's gonna be a point of discussion, I think.
And to answer the other question earlier about the normal type damage, there's one thing we overlooked is all three cast forms actually get tackle as a move.
Oh, that's
so you
right.
could run tackle.
To make Bennett better.
Exactly.
Yeah, no thanks.
Would you ever want the second move on Sunny cast form? Well, you definitely want that Weather Ball, because Weather Ball's a really good move. And then having Solar Beam is definitely helpful if you get into any of those water matchups, because you can potentially threaten a shield or get a KO, depending on how it all plays out. Especially if you can, maybe get your Sunny cast form in a farmable matchup against a grass type, and then you have that Solar Beam ready to go for the incoming water type.
Let's talk a little bit about the dragons, right? Because on screen we have this very nice chart that Palamon made just as a sort of a beginner's guide to approach team building. And I know the dragons have been very, very popular. Some people talking about double dragon strat. What dragons would you guys recommend or even go with if you had to go into a tournament today or tomorrow?
I'd say Dragonair looks to be the best of the lot. Resisting all the elemental types, and it has a little bit spammier moves than the other two.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd say Dragonair, in my opinion, is the best, and the one you should run if you're running only one dragon type. I think if you're running a double dragon strat, then Kingdra is a good option. That water typing offers some different coverage, allowing it to double resist water and fire, and it does have some more nuky charge moves. I'm not too sold on Shelgon here, but if someone else has an argument, I could potentially be convinced.
I think the only argument I would even begin to present for Shogun would be flamethrower. I mean, I don't really consider Twister, a major factor for Shogun, but definitely the flamethrower and the coverage it can provide against grass. But again, I mean, I feel like even that's a stretch. I feel like Shogun should definitely be the last pick. Definitely should go Dragonair and then Kingdra.
And more on Dragonair, actually. There was some discussion last night about the moves with Return or Dragon Pulse as your secondary move outside of Aqua Tail.
Or Wrap.
Or Wrap, yeah. The difference, Return only actually turns one losing matchup into an additional tie over Dragon Pulse. So even though you save 20% on the power-up cost in the second move, you're only really gaining one matchup.
Well, I mean, you could always use a purified Dragonair and TM Return to Dragon Pulse.
Right, that's another option too.
Which would save you that dust like you talked about, and would have some mind games, because your opponent would be like, oh, he's using Return, and then it's actually Wrap, or it's actually Dragon Pulse.
And there's some chatter just about Flygon as well. So what do you guys think about that?
If you
It's
got
double
Dragon
weak.
Breath instead of Earth Power, probably? Possibly.
I don't even think that would do it. The ground typing means it's taking neutral from water and it's taking neutral from grass,
And
which
it's double
isn't
weak to
great.
ice.
Yes, and it's double weak to ice. I think all of which put it in a bad spot. Whereas Dragonair is resisting water and grass. Kingdra is, while it's taking neutral from grass, it's taking neutral from ice as well, and it's double resisting water. I just don't think that Flygon's typing helps it at all here. I think it's actually a liability.
One thing that's interesting of this meta is that it doesn't seem like there's almost any Charmers around. I think the only Charmer might just be Kanto Raichu, right?
And you bring that, that'll only work in game one.
Donphin, I suppose, is a Charmer.
Oh,
Ground types are banned.
Or ground types specifically banned?
No, ground types aren't banned.
They're not banned.
We have Mud Boys. We have
I'm just kind of looking through the list. I know that
Yeah.
Fairy are banned. I see Donphin. I see Latias is legendary.
Yeah, I think it's basically only Donphin and Kanto Raichu.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's basically no charm here, which is part of why the dragons are so good, because there's basically no fairy type damage at all. So it's mainly just ice that's keeping them in check.
Is there any allure to charm, since that steel types aren't as prevalent here, and then perhaps poison isn't as much in the forefront?
I think you're gonna see some poison between like Venusaur, Victory Bell, and then people might use poison types to keep the grass types in check.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's definitely going to be some poison here.
I can't really think of any reason to, bring a Charmer other than for a cheese team or a meme team. I mean, if the fire would resist it and the poison would resist it. And, since ice is going to be so much more prevalent subjectively for this meta, there's just, it doesn't really fill that role, I think, as properly as it should.
And I think that the only two charmers available just are a little lacking here. Like Donphin's going to be weak to ice, water, and grass.
Mm-hmm.
And Kanto Raichu, I just don't think is in that great of a spot in general.
Yeah, just looking at a quick sim, Kanto Raichu against Dragonair, which would, if you were to run Charm, that would be one of the main reasons to be running Charm. Dragon Breath alone brings it to about 27 HP.
Yeah, it's not even worth it.
It's pretty
Not
rough.
even close to worth it, dude.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing is both our charm users are still taking neutral damage from Dragon Breath.
All right, we also have in those subcategories we have Poison, which you've talked briefly about. I know there is a little bit of hype around Venomoth this time around. Silverwind seems like just about the most common sense move that you could run. Poison Fang being legacy. But is there any reason to be running Confusion, Silverwind, and Psychic? Maybe just pick up a better IV one than perhaps your legacy?
I mean, I guess like it gives you that nuke option, but I think you probably want a faster charge move. So I wonder if running a return would be better than running psychic if you don't have the legacy.
What do you think, Jay?
Jay, I'll be back in a minute, I guess.
I got to go take a quick break.
Okay.
Break. It's bad. I'll be right back.
Brandon.
Well, like Tristan said, Psychic would be a nuke option, but at the same time, I feel like if you'd have Psychic, there may be a bit more merit to potentially pairing it with Legacy Bug Bite instead to get the bug damage off that way, and then have Psychic as a surprise nuke.
So what do you
the other way around?
Bug Bite. I suppose you definitely lose the Ghost, very good Ghost matchup.
You'd lose the fire types even harder.
Yeah, definitely. You wouldn't be doing anything against fire types.
You do worse against the poison types, but slightly better against the dark poisons, I believe.
Wouldn't you do worse against Venusaur, since you're not hitting it at fusion?
I think you would. And you do a lot worse against Haunter, if that becomes relevant.
Bug Bite would be interesting if it ever becomes more prevalent than Confusion. Confusion just being such a great move, and there not being any psychic types. The thing is, they didn't just remove psychic types, right? They removed a lot of the main reason that psychic types are super viable.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, the main appeal of Venomoth is going to be that it acts as a pretty solid grass counter.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a better grass counter than a lot of the fire types, just because it's also resisting poison moves. Whereas like a Sludge Bomb from a Venusaur almost takes out a Charizard. But Venomoth can tank that. So it's a bit better against a lot of the grass types. And I think the other appeal is that I think Confusion and Silverwind are going to be hitting a lot of the meta for neutral. So it's like a relatively safe mon, I'd say.
Fair enough. And you briefly mentioned Ice Fang, I believe, on Drapion. Do you think that's going to be a thing this month?
That was Brandon that mentioned it. Honestly, I haven't looked into Ice Fang for Drapion at all, so I can't really give it a good discussion.
Well, off the top of my head, it does slightly better against the grass poison types, being super effective instead of neutral, even though you lose stab from infestation. And also super effective against the dragon types, but you're resisted by the ice, the fire, and the water types as well. So there are some trade-offs. I believe it does generate energy a bit faster than infestation, but I could be wrong there too.
No, Ice Fang's definitely on the slower side for energy gain. Ice Fang, Fire Fang, and Thunder Fang all have identical stats, I believe. So just think of how like Thunder Fang Steelix was fairly slow. It's going to be similar.
Right. I mean, I personally haven't looked into Ice Fang Drapion yet, but that's one of the things I'm looking into testing later on today.
We have a question for Wrap versus Return on Dragonair. I mean, that's going to come down. I haven't done many sims, so you're just going to have to sim and see what matchups one or the other picks up. I know that Return is slightly less energy. Wrap is a little bit more energy efficient. So there's definitely going to be probably a couple matchups where the speed of Return comes in handy versus other matchups where the better DPE of Wrap comes out on top. But again, also don't sleep on Dragon Pulse. I think is another quite viable move.
Yeah, just looking at the energy comparison, as you said, return is a little bit faster for just 10 less damage.
Yeah, I think it's 5 less energy. I think it's 40 energy and 50 damage, whereas Wrap is, I think, 45 energy and 60 damage.
I
So
just
they're
don't
pretty
see,
close.
I just don't see how you need return on a Dragonair, because Aquatail is already doing you that 35 energy, so it's less energy than any either return or wrap,
Yeah.
and it's already giving you that bait factor. I just think that Aquatail Dragon Pulse is going to be the way to go. Is there any argument against that?
I mean, I think it's the only argument would be if you need a little better damage output against water types, because Dragon Pulse is going to be slower. It's going to be harder to land Dragon Pulse against, like Kingdra or Lapras or Celio or whatever it may be. Whereas maybe Return or Wrap helps in those matchups. Again, like I said, I haven't been able to sim those out yet. I'm assuming you're still losing to those ice types, but it might help make the loss a little closer.
Definitely, I think the key matchup for Return rather than Aquatail Dragon Pulse is specifically Lapras. I still kind of prefer Aquatail Dragon Pulse myself, but it makes the Lapras matchup, especially if it has Ice Shard, it makes that a much bigger headache than it would be with Return, at least.
Fair
Wait,
enough.
so you're saying Dragon Pulse is better against Lapras than Return?
No, I feel like Return is going to be better. It could be, situational too. Obviously, there's going to be situational arguments that'll come into play, but with the few battles that I've done, I've always regretted having Dragon Pulse instead of Return against Lapras. If I just try and bait and go for that Aquatail rather than just going for the Dragon Pulse and they call the bait, then that's like a huge wasted opportunity, and it's going to take you a bit to get up to Dragon Pulse again with Dragon Breath.
Someone was saying in chat that without Wrap or Return, you lose the mirror match. Like I said, I haven't simmed that, but that is one that's worth considering if Dragonair ends up being as prevalent as we're expecting.
One question in chat: what are these guys' YouTube channels? Jeff, Suave. All of us are peasants here except for Jay Devon. Jay Devon is the only one with a really good YouTube channel. You should definitely check it out, though. It's Jay Devon, just as it sounds. And he's got a lot of really good content. And he's made some good content for us. But all of us here are just talking about the meta as we see it so far.
The rest of us just piggyback on the Go Stadium YouTube channel.
Yeah, we just rest on the laurels of that success.
Definitely check that out. That's where I'm going to be focusing a lot of my efforts.
So I guess before we jump into the battles, the only category that we've sort of not really touched on that much has been the rock water category as a whole. I guess they just lumped it in as an anti-fire. I'm seeing some interesting picks there. We talked a little bit about Lantern. What do you guys think about Relicanth in this meta? Besides getting deleted by Grass, what is it doing for you?
Getting that boost.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Ancient Power, right?
I think it has a lot of good matchups, even with, obviously, the severe Razor Leafer threat. It's the same threat to Mud Boys, but Mud Boys still have a solid role. The thing I think Relicanth really has going for him for this meta with TImless is, one, he's going to be a water gunner, so he's going to shut down a lot of fire threats. He'll still take super effective from a counter user like Blaziken, so that's considerable. But water gunner, like if it's a Sunny Cast Form or a Charizard, it's pretty much going to shut those down. And I think we brought this up already too before. Rock type is going to be, I think, widely unresisted for the most part. So having access to that Ancient Power, getting same type attack bonus from it, and then of course the cheesy potential boost is really where he comes in clutch. But also just the energy efficiency with Aquatail, it's very spammable.
Dun Didum is saying that Relicanth beats Lapras.
Just from that Ancient Power spam?
I think so. It might be bait dependent though.
Yeah, just looking at the sim with the default IVs, Lapras, it's kind of like one of those long battles. But Lapras does faint out with leaving Relicanth at 16 HP. If Relicanth opts not to shield bait, instead of not using Aqua Tail, just goes straight for Ancient Power, it still wins, but with a little bit less HP. And Lapras would be halfway to another Surf before it goes down. So it's a pretty convincing, I think I'd say it's a pretty convincing counter to Lapras. It's not like it can do a whole lot after because its energy is depleted, but it can beat Lapras, that's for sure. And it definitely beats Charizard. And so having that Water Gun Ancient Power combination can do a lot against quite a few things. It's just you just don't want it anywhere near like a Venusaur or a Razor Leaf or anything like that.
It also does decently well against. I mean, it can hold its own against Dragonair. It actually barely wins in the no shield and 2 shield situation.
Oh, really?
And brings Dragonair down to 11 HP in the 1 shield. And that's with the bait on both sides.
And Fates is saying it does well against poisons too, because it will be resisting that poison damage because of its rock typing. Yeah, Relicanth is definitely an interesting pick that I hadn't even thought about that I'll have to look into a little more now.
This has got me thinking about Relicanth.
I just want to give a quick shout out to Katie for my Relicanth.
You got one from Katie?
Yep, at Safari at 3 in the morning.
Very nice. Yeah, those DC Relicanth were really, really clutch. It's been nice to be able to. I was just able to give one to Kakuna over from P Poke.
Oh, nice.
Over in Minneapolis this past weekend, so that was pretty cool. So I hope it becomes really great.
I hope so too. I mean, considering the Lapras and the Charizard matchup, I feel like for both of those, I'd rather just use the Charge Beam Lantern. But yeah, you know, considering its matchups against the poisons as well, I think it has a good shot. Has a good shot for sure.
Best Razor Leafer from among the options. I think that's difficult to say. I think that Ludicolo and Abomasnow offer some appeal because they're going to be the hardest Lapras counters, seeing as they're taking neutral from Ice Shard, where all the other ones are going to be weak to it. Obviously, Victory Bell is going to be quite good, doing well in most of those grass head-to-heads due to its poison subtyping and access to like Sludge Bomb or Acid Spray. And then, you know, there's going to be some play for, like, say, Blossom, for example, because it doesn't have that poison subtyping. So if people are using, like, a Venomoth to counter grass types, it's not going to do quite as well. Someone's asking about Shiftry. AJ, what do you think about Shiftry here?
I've never been a huge fan of Shiftry outside of metas where it's basically the only Razor Leafer available. And just looking at some of the other options, let's think about this, right? Razor Leaf or a dark subtyping, not having fighting around should be good. Not having flying or fairy, fairy rather, would mean there's just less options to counter it hard. Psychic not being allowed also means that dark subtyping is neither doing something great or good for you.
It's a little on the flimsy side too.
Yeah.
Which I don't necessarily love about it. I mean, I think you could use it. I'm just finding a hard time justifying why you would run Shiftry over like Victory Bell, Blossom, Ludicolo, or Abomasnow.
Yeah, what is Shiftry doing with, I suppose, dark subtyping and foul play that the other Razor Leafers aren't? And so that would be the question to answer. And you know, if you can carve a niche for it through that, you know, pick
it's
rarity.
Probably doing a little better against Venomoth, and it's going to do better against Haunter, but that's like super niche. I'm just not
Ironically,
sure
though,
that's enough.
if Venomoth has Bug Bite, it's about to get super diluted. That would be
Yeah,
the
I mean, Serio, it does resist Psychic, but the point is, like, Psychic types aren't allowed in this meta. So there's not a ton of Psychic damage here. Like, the only Psychic damage here that I can really think of is going to be, like, Confusion from a Venomoth or a Dustox, or, like, a Psy Shock from a Kanto Ninetales. But besides that, there's not really many Psychic type moves that are going to be used in this meta.
And even the
Amosh said it can
Jump
handle the
there.
potential rise of ghosts. I'm just not sure. I mean, I'm just not sure Ghost is going to be that central. The ghosts, the ones we talked about, you have like Haunter and Banette, which are both fairly squishy and are going to, I think, struggle because of that. And then you have Dusclops, which, like we mentioned, doesn't hit too hard with its moves. So I'm just not. I mean, I don't think ghosts are a bad choice, but I'm not sold that they're going to be that big of a threat that it's worth running Shift Tree over another Razor Leaf user.
All right, I think we have Brandon's screen up here. Let's see. Since I suppose it's a bit on the early side to be doing declared teams of 6, how about we just have him use at least one starter in his team of 3? What do you guys think of that idea?
Sure.
Sure. And before we do that, each of you guys get to pick one thing I power up right now.
Oh, well, I think
Is that level 1 camera up an option?
If I must, yes.
what do you have a
I'll
dragon?
do it if I need to.
I
have
won't
2
be that
Dragonairs. I have got this rank 127 shiny with Dragon Pulse and Aqua Tail, or the rank 40 purified.
Well, the Dragonair would be appealing, I think, just to be able to see that, since it seems like it's pretty dominant.
Does
I
anyone
know.
want to see any legacy Dugongs?
No.
I do.
No.
Got the Ice Shard one, got the Aqua Jet one, got the Icy Wind one, and then I have a rank 1 non-legacy.
Useful. Very useful.
You should just run an only Dugong team.
Well,
Seems like a very big weakness to grass.
I'd like to see a Dragonair at some point. I'd like to see a Relicanth at some point.
My fault. Really can't.
You'd go for Relicanth, Jay?
For sure, yeah.
All right. Well, if you don't have any Dragonairs invested in yet, that'd be my pick, just to be able to see those on stream.
And Tristan, what's your pick?
I don't know, what else do you have? Do you already have like a Ludicolo?
Yep, got 2 of those.
Let me think.
From the graphic, the only thing I'm missing outside of
Dustox.
Torkoal, which is I don't have one of those. I have a level 1 67% IV that I'm not maxing.
Surely you have a few Wurmples lying around. I say you max out the Wurmple and then roll the dice on the evolution.
Maybe for a different stream.
And we can have a vote to see what people think it'll be. I mean, do you
I
already
would
have
pick
all the
something
cast
else from-
forms?
I don't have Snowy, but give me about 3 or 4 days. We're going to get about 10 centimeters of snow, so I'll get one then.
What about a Legacy Polytoad?
Already got it.
Ice Fang Drapion. Fates is staying in chat.
That's awesome.
I can get
I
on
have
board with that.
Drapion. I mean, I have it made. I just need to re-roll it from Bite. Almost done powering up.
What about a water gun, a Hydro Pump Blizzard Lapras?
No.
Tristan is just looking for something that's 75k that's going to sting.
Oh, cool. Well, that's a good move.
Do you have
So it's a
Celio?
Purified Dragonair. I can make one.
I feel like
got a better one
Celio
the
would
other
be
day.
fun to see. Well, do you already have one though?
I mean, I have... Yeah, where's my Celio at? I have a rank 669 already powered up.
I mean, why don't you
Or-
just use that one for tonight?
Okay. Should have got a battle.
I would like to see some
Maybe.
Celio play though, because I've heard some people talking well about it.
Zelio with water gun or powder snow?
I think powder snow, probably powder snow. Oh, what charge move would you run in addition to body slam? Do you guys think you'd run a aurora beam or water pulse?
Aurora beam, probably.
Well, I'll give you guys a little insight into mine, which is why I'm not going to be using it.
What's the insight?
Oh, sorry. Stream's a couple seconds behind. You'll see it.
So you're going to be asking for battles in the Friends and Battles chat on Go Stadium?
I could do
Or
that.
I can do
Actually,
it.
no, I asked a couple of locals and some other friends.
Okay. Great. That works.
So that's the Celio that I've got.
Oh,
Powder snow, water pulse. I mean, water pulse would help against like fires, I suppose. It would help against like Relicanth, I guess, just to name something.
do you have a bomb of snow?
All right. I do. It's only got one move, but I'm going to make a second one at some point. And by at some point, meaning whenever one of you tells me to.
Okay.
Good question. I guess then if somebody wants to use a bomb of snow and they don't want to buy a second move for it, and you can only choose one, what one move do you think you'd pick?
I think outrage.
Yeah. I agree.
Blizzard.
Blizzard. Why Blizzard?
If you're already going overkill on Razor Leaf, you might as well go overkill on the charge move too.
That you're never going to get to.
Exactly.
Man, to get to Blizzard with Razor Leaf, that's pretty rough.
So do I have to use a starter in every single line of 3?
Yeah, let's just to get a feel for this. Now, Katie, is there any way to have his screen up on Hangouts, or are we going to rely on seeing it on stream? Just let us know. Either in
It has
chat.
to be on stream only.
Okay, so we won't be doing a live sort of casting over it since we're going to be seeing a little bit of a delay.
Yeah, it'll be super delayed.
But Brandon, you can just kind of walk through what you're picking, and then we can sort of theorize on how we think it's going to go down based on the common picks. And then
Actually, let me go a bit different. I'll take requests from chat. So the first thing I see is Chief Buddington saying Charizard, Lapras, and a Razor Leafer.
Okay.
Seems like a perfect opportunity to bust out my maxed out rank 1 Lombre.
Perfect.
Ooh.
1, 2.
Yeah. Lombre not being as great as Ludicolo, I guess, stats-wise. But it does have access to Ice Beam, I want to say.
That is a good question. I powered it up
Yeah,
second
but,
move, didn't forgot about it.
Does it get Ice Beam though?
I
Ludicolo
think
has
it's got-
ice beam now too.
Did it not have it before? I remember the reason why we know a certain amount about Lombre is because we theorized that it was going to be one of the better options available. Oh, it has Bubble Beam.
Yeah, it has bubble beam, grass knot, and ice beam.
Yeah, when before what was the second Twilight came out, we thought maybe the Misty's badge Cascade was going to be the next the February themed cup, and so we looked at what a water only meta would look like, and Lombre came up pretty high because at the time Ludicolo only had Blizzard, I think. I don't
And
think
hydro
it had,
pump.
and yeah, well, as opposed to Ice Beam, that's what I meant. But
Yeah.
and now Lombre still has Razor
Nope.
Leaf,
And it didn't work. All right.
and Bubble Beam has been added to its. Well, it hasn't been added, but it is now a different type of move. So you're going up against Wrangler. I know
I'm
Wrangler
trying to. It
goes deep
booted
into
us
the
out.
Sims. He's been practicing so far. Really top level player. OM2 Ash, Surf and Ice Beam on Lapras, or any play for its other moves. I think for the most part, people are considering Ice Shard, Surf, and Skull Bash on Lapras. Ice Beam is a great move, but Ice Shard is already doing a decent amount of heavy lifting. Surf is, I think it's the fastest move that Lapras has available, and it's
Yeah,
a great, solid DPE move with Stab.
and it just helps it just output some extra damage. Like,
And yeah, I just don't see where would Ice Beam be. I mean, landing an Ice Beam on a dragon or a grass type would be good, but in many of those matchups, you see even though Surf is resisted, it adds that little bit of chip damage that it needs just to win.
yeah, a lot of those matchups, it's literally most of the damage is coming from Ice Shard, and Surf is just doing that little extra that it needs.
Yeah.
Just giving you that extra
Skull
push.
Bush is really important for the mirror match, as
And-
well as matchups against other water types. So Lantern and Celio are the other two big ones that Skull Bash really helps with. Ice Beam helps with Swampert. I haven't simmed that one, but I imagine you want to be just spamming Surf against Swampert, because Surf and Ice Beam are both going to be doing neutral damage, and Surf has better DPE.
All right, so we're working on reconnecting Brandon. Just keep rolling in the questions from chat. I mean, if you guys have any questions on what you think might be good, I think you're right, Tristan. Surf generally is just going to be doing just fine, and then Ice Beam just takes too long to charge compared to Surf against something like Swampert.
Well, that, and I feel like the only reason I would opt to use Surf instead of, or opt to use Ice Beam instead of Surf is if, it's getting to be like the end of the game and you're in a really, really rough spot, and it's clear that Ice Beam is going to KO where Surf would not. So,
Right.
I don't feel like it's justifiable to sacrifice the positives you gain from having Skull Bash just to have Ice Beam.
If you just throw in on PE Poke Swampert and then you put Lapras up against it, it still recommends Surf and Skull Bash for whatever that's worth. And if you look at the DPE, I mean, Ice Beam is 1.23, Surf is 1.22, and then Surf is coming out at 15 energy before Ice Beam is, which is pretty massive. I mean, 15 energy is a pretty big difference, especially considering Ice Shard is a fairly slow move, and it takes about 2 Ice Shards to make up for that difference.
Yeah, and I mean, the other big thing is, without Skull Bash, you're going to be in a really rough spot for the mirror match, because Surf and Ice Beam are both going to be resisted. And with how prevalent Lapras is going to be, I really think you need that Skull Bash for the mirror match. Cello Puddin is saying they're nervous to roll Ice Beam off Legacy Lapras because of future cups. That's fair, but considering Lapras had a raid day, it shouldn't be too hard to get your hands on at least a couple double Legacy Laprases. And so, just find one and you can TM one to Skull Bash and you can save another one for later. Virg is asking what fire types we prefer outside of the starters. I think we touched on this before, but I think it's really Sunny Cast Form or Kanto Ninetales. I think are going to be the way to go for alternative fire types.
And
Would you guys agree with
on
that?
the topic of Kanto Ninetales, would you run Legacy Flamethrower or would you opt for Solar Beam?
Paired with Psyshock, I'm assuming you're saying?
Yeah, paired with
Yeah.
Psyshock.
Well, what is Psyshock giving you here? other than just a fast move to pump
Yeah,
out.
it's giving you that spam option.
And the poison types.
Yeah.
I guess
It's also
quicker,
giving you a
yeah,
neutral hit
the
against
waters.
Dragonair.
And a
Dragonair
super
too, yeah.
effective one against Blaziken if you need it.
And you said something about waters, Jay?
Yeah, well, the sidekick will hit the waters neutral too. The side
That's
shock.
true.
Yeah, I'm not sure Flamethrower is honestly giving you that much. Obviously, like a late game nuke for like a grass type, but with shields in play, Fire Spin plus a Psy Shock is going to do most of the heavy lifting. Especially if they're using a poison subtype one, like a Venusaur or a Victory Bell. Fates was asking if we feel like fire type is even necessary. I don't know. What do you guys think? I would say it's not necessary, but if you're not doing a fire type, you're probably going to be picking up like a Venomoth or a Skuntank or something, because you definitely need a counter to the grass types. It doesn't necessarily have to be a fire type, but you do need some answer to grasses. What do you guys think?
Yeah, it's a good point. You know, if you're running dragons and you're running ice types just to check those grasses anyway, I suppose you don't necessarily need a fire type. And that is another point, is that the starters, you know, in Blaziken and Charizard, the main appeal isn't necessarily their fire typing, it's their other subtyping, right?
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I wonder, you know, if maybe the poison types are a little better off if you're trying to, you know, keep the grass types under control, just because they're going to be taking neutral from water, as opposed to being weak to water. So yeah, I think, you know, now that we've talked it out, I think if you don't go for Charizard or Blaziken due to their unique coverage, that I'm wondering if a poison type might be better off. Would you guys agree, or do you guys see any merit to, you know, using a fire over a poison?
Yeah, the more that I mull it over, it just seems like fire would overlap with some other good categories like poison, and yeah, that'd be interesting.
I think the main argument for fire is if like Venomoth becomes popular, because fire will be able to deal with the grass and Venomoth. So if other people are dealing with Venomoth, using Venomoth to beat the grasses, then you can bring in a fire that's going to beat their grass and their grass counter. But for the most part, I think I'd lean more towards the poison types.
I can agree with that. But on the most part, the reason I'd even run Tails, for example, necessarily for, you know, the super effective damage with Fire Spin is just because of the Psy Shock having all the neutral coverage that it has. And I mean, I'm not even counting on, you know, getting to a Solar Beam and having a huge play with that. It's just about the Fire Spin Psy Shock damage output. And that's, I mean, that role is basically filled by, you know, something like Drapion or Skuntank.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, which of the poison types, which do you guys find yourself gravitating towards?
Drapion.
Interesting. What
And you're
move?
thinking, yeah, which fast move?
Bite.
Ooh,
Oh, really?
interesting. Why
Why
bite?
We're Jay.
Interesting. Why? I think Bite Drapion, number one, because Call Me Jake wrecked me on his stream last night, and he used Bite Drapion. Well, number two, I mean, it's basically super quick damage against pretty much everything. I mean, what's really here that's going to resist the bite damage? But also, I mean, even with Bite being super slow, it has access to Aqua Tail, which even if it's not resisted, you know, it has that shield bait potential. And also, you know, still having access to something like Crunch, for example. If they assume it's an Aqua Tail and it's actually Crunch, that could be huge.
So you would go Aqua Tail Crunch, or would you consider Sludge Bomb?
I feel like I'd go Aqua Tail Crunch right now, I feel like there's definitely valid arguments for Sludge Bomb. I mean, it's going to be a better play, I would say, against Waters too. It's going to be a better play against Waters than something like Crunch would be. What's the energy requirement difference between Sludge Bomb and Crunch? That's my question right now. Let me see.
It's only 5 or 10 energy, I think.
On the topic of energy gain, Ice Fang does pick up a little bit more energy gain over Bite. I know this because it's a clone of Fire Fang, and then I compare them a lot in Sinister, Fire Fang versus Bite, and so it's just the same amount of damage in neutral, not counting for stab, but it's a little bit higher energy.
So AJ, what fast move would you run on Drapion?
I think Ice Fang. Is there anything else that you would?
I mean, there's Infestation. I haven't seen that though.
I don't.
That's gonna be your best energy gain, but I'm not sure if it's gonna be good enough.
I don't see much point. The fast moves on or the charge moves on Drapion aren't amazing necessarily. And so that's sort of the gimmick is doing a lot of the heavy lifting with the fast move, and then having those low energy charge moves to be able to get to them if you need them in crunch.
Definitely. Yeah, I feel like if you're, now that I'm thinking about it, I'd probably rather just run Skuntank if I was considering an Infestation Drapion.
Yeah, I think so.
You'd prefer running Ice Fang on Drapion even with the Waters?
I mean, water is the biggest consideration. I think Bite makes it a little more of a generalist, and Ice Fang gives it some more of a niche.
Oh, looks like we have Beagold's screen back on. So I think we'll be able to finally see a few battles.
Hopefully, yes.
Hopefully. Fingers crossed.
Dun, dun, dun.
Anadactyl, you're asking about PvP IVs on Legacy Venomoth. Generally, the sort of canned answer to that is moves matter more than IVs. That being said, there are going to be inevitably some matchups that you lose just from, not being able to get to that extra charge move, not being able to resist a little bit more damage, not reaching a bulk point. So we can't answer that specific question. What I recommend is plugging in your IVs into PV Poke for Venomoth, simming it against the field, and see how it compares against something with better IVs without the legacy move.
You guys are about to see Lumber in action.
All right. Oh, wow. So he brought in his return Banette to start. We were sort of predicting that rise of ghost types in the meta, right?
I mean, you were saying it was possible. It's just tough to say if they really have enough of a spot. But like we said, they definitely go mostly unresisted here.
And
that return hit hard.
It hits hard and it comes out pretty quickly too. But it's still one of those cases.
Too, I think with the ghosts that we've been discussing is, if we're going to prefer just using poison or dark poison rather than even bringing a fire to begin with, that would kind of shut them out a bit, wouldn't it?
Right. Unless people opt for, rather than a dark poison, if they go for like a Venomoth or a Cantomuck or like a Dustox. Obviously, that's not a great spot for Haunter, but definitely Banette could see some play against those. And
it is kind of goofy how we're dumping on fires, and that both of our players opted to choose a fire type for their starter.
So actually, chat chose this one for me.
Yeah, just blame it on chat if you lose, huh? That's how it is.
I'm blaming it on weak connection and chat. And I died with the shield. That's even better.
Virgus saying, I would like to know everyone's opinion. does it seem problematic that a good portion of the top 12 are legacy or purified mons?
Well, let's look into this statement. Are
So
you counting legacy as community day move? If
I
so,
assume so.
I kind of question that. It's fairly easy to get a Venusaur, Meganium, or Charizard. Enough people have those. Swampert, obviously, most PvPers should have it. And of those, it really would only come down to choosing one of those. You wouldn't have
Exactly.
on your team.
And then, I mean, Dragonair is listed at number 2 with Return, but we had a pretty lengthy discussion about how Dragon Pulse and even Wrap are both quite viable. So I don't think you need Dragonair to be purified. And then we have Kingdra, which is a non-legacy. Lapras, again, it's technically a legacy, but it had a raid day. So again, it shouldn't be too hard to find some. I'm assuming most PvPers participated in that raid day and probably have at least a couple. Even if they didn't, there should be. You can probably find at least one or two to trade for from your locals and not have to give up too much for them. Yeah, Venomoth has a legacy, but it'll be. I'm not sure how meta-centric or not it'll be. Again, Haunter is a similar story. I'm not sure how meta-centric it'll be, and again, we discussed how Shadow Ball is probably better, but you could also use a Sludge Bomb. And then you have a Skuntank, which is a non-legacy. So I don't necessarily think it's that big of a problem. There's definitely been metas that have been more centric on legacy mons.
Yeah, I think I agree with all of what you just said.
And Chief Buddington said he has 20 Ice Shard Laprases, which I think is probably common for a decent number of people. I know I did quite a few raids on a Lapras raid day just to make sure I had a bunch for myself and to trade any friends.
Could we just talk about how much damage Dragon Breath was doing on that Empoleon, even though it's supposed to be resisted?
It does do a lot of damage, but
I mean, we see that all the time with like Altaria too, where Dragon Breath just chips away at anything really.
Except Bastion.
Yeah.
except now you get to see what happens when you switch too early. Oh no, you already saw it. My bad.
So you're running the variant on Victory Bell that I've just sort of been a little bit excited about, but you opted for Acid Spray there.
I'm running the Pour on Charge TMs variant, actually.
Yeah, I mean, Acid Spray and Sludge Bomb is not like it's, it's not like it's, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of cases, I think a lot of cases you don't necessarily need Leaf Blade just because you're already doing the heavy lifting grass damage with Razor Leaf.
Especially with the waters in this cup right now. I mean, none of the waters want to see a Razor Leaf.
And that's a good example of where you'd want to see Dragon Pulse on your Dragonair, right? Because otherwise you would have had him.
Either way, he had the charge move before I did because I had.
Yeah, but he had Dragon Pulse, and without Dragon Pulse, I don't think he would have. He would have definitely not been able to nuke you like that.
Right. Another team recommendation from chat. Let's see what anyone has. Unless one of you guys have a team you want me to try out first.
Let's see some Relicanth.
My
Relicanth isn't powered up, unfortunately.
Well, power it up. I never picked one.
I'll power it up later.
Wait, Jay said Relicanth.
Yeah, I powered up the Dragonair first, then tried to go into battles.
We'll do that. We'll do it later.
I mean, McDaniel's not going to be a Razor Leaf fan. still grass though.
Actually, let's try out.
Just bring like Bastion and Skarmory, see what they do.
All right, guys, I gotta get going. Good stream, and I'll catch y'all later.
All right. See ya.
Bye, Tristan.
Toodles,
We'll
toodles.
wrapping up in a few minutes, but at least we'll be able to see a couple more battles.
I'm gonna go with 1, 2, and
So, all right, gun to the head. Jay, if you had to pick a team of 6 and your goal wasn't to cheese it up, what would you go for?
Wasn't to cheese it up, so if I'm going meta,
Yeah, you're just trying to win.
I'm going for the W. I'm going to bring Lapras. I'm going to bring Dragonair. I'm going to bring Blaziken.
Okay.
I'm going to bring Drapion. I'm actually going to bring Drapion with Ice Fang.
Nice. So we've converted you.
Yeah, I think I'm convinced on that. Then I'd also bring, what is that, 4 right now? Then I bring, I want to say Ludicolo. I'm going to go Ludicolo.
Okay.
And then I'm going to bring Lantern.
Interesting. So you'd basically be relying on Drapion and Blaziken to take out. Well, I guess to some extent, Dragonair and Lapras do okay. I was thinking about grass types just then, but
I think Charge Beam Lantern would. It feels like it'd be a good game winner, especially against the Lapras. I think the Dragonair would be the one that's going to do most of the heavy lifting. And then Lapras, I mean, especially with Dice Shard Surf and the Skull Bash, that's just going to be able to. I feel like it's just going to dominate unless it's matched up against a Venusaur and it takes a Frenzy Plant.
fair enough.
What do you think about that 6?
I'm just kind of looking at it. I kind of agree with the charge beam aspect. You just wanted to charge that much faster. Electric is kind of neither here nor there as far as how good it is, but water gun isn't doing too much for you either. So you just basically want to rely on those thunderbolts come out that much faster.
I think it's just all about being able to directly answer the Lapras matchup.
Yeah.
Rather than hoping you win it or hoping you get a shield bait.
Yeah. It seems, I mean, on the surface, it seems fairly balanced. I don't see any massive openings. I guess you would be relying mostly on the surface. You're relying a bit on Lapras to take out dragons, but looking at it a little bit further, you see Drapion with Ice Fang, you see Dragonair in the mirror, and then of course Lapras. So you end up having 3 that are decent, and then the Blaziken at least is doing neutral against them with counter.
Could be decent. I think the main thing is, again, aside from the starter, the starter really can be the flexible pick, like we talked about towards the beginning. I don't think you necessarily need to start picking your starter. That's how I started when I, first looked at TImless. Is okay, pick a starter. Well, that's the first thing I'm doing, right? But no, the starters aren't the meta. I feel like the starters are essentially going to be the flex picks for the most part.
Sure. Oh man, I don't know if you're
that
seeing
was rough.
but this Swampert just took a big W. It just charges so fast. That Earthquake charges so fast with Mudshot. It's just unbelievably fast.
Would you run Swampert?
Would I? Maybe. You'd have to team build around it and be beefed up against your grass types. I think if you're running Swampert, perhaps you'd be thinking about categories such as like Venomoth. You'd be thinking about running maybe Drapion with Ice Fang, maybe a Skuntank, definitely a Dragon type. The problem with Swampert, I suppose, is that it doesn't. I don't know. Like it's weak to grass, and then Lapras being so great here that you're just sort of you're almost doubling up on that category. It feels.
It feels like you have to land an Earthquake to really pick up pacing. You
Yeah,
end up being stuck against a Lapras.
but no doubt. I mean, I see it as very viable, a threat to consider.
All right, Jay, I'm doing the Relicanth for you now.
Let's go, dude.
I don't know if I should second move it right now, but I'm gonna power it up at least.
Does it have ancient power?
It does.
I think that's all you need right now.
Yeah, just Water Gun Ancient Power.
It is 75k, so
The
If you
bigger
wanna
issue
throw
is
it at
the
him,
candy.
and go for it. Well, the TMs too.
Hydro Pump is
Yeah.
the other one. Jeez, Water Gun Hydro Pump.
Luddington says Math Magician tweeted a good, and Valmaresh retweeted get a 6 to start, then replace one with a starter. Oh, good team.
Yeah, someone said that earlier in the stream. Is that they're sort of
Yeah, that was Math Magician himself saying it actually. All right, thanks again, Katie, for this, and I'll test it out soon.
yeah, Katie rolling in with the awesome trades.
Oh, I like
Let's
that.
see.
This might be a good starting point or timeline. Start with this, then swap a starter that you like. For example, swap Victory Bell for Venusaur, Quag for Swampert. So he's got Lapras, Lantern, I assume Charge Beam, and the Victory Bell, Venomoth, Quagsire, and the Dragonair. I agree with that. For sure. Interesting though is he's like we've talked about a little bit, I guess. He has no fire. He has the technically double poison, I guess, right now.
I think we'll do a couple more battles and then we'll look at wrapping this up.
Yep, I'm just trying to find something else I could potentially power up.
Well, with Relicanth, what would you want to end up pairing it up with? You would want to maybe Venomoth? I don't know.
So I actually have a couple of Venomoths. You're a little behind stream right now, but I traded myself. I got a level 27, I want to say, Venomoth from a friend with Poison Fang. Ended up rolling too high. It's double legacy, actually, though.
Oh, rip.
I
I
have my...
Drapion?
I've got a Drapion. I can do that. Bite to Poison Sting.
No, it's got Poison Sting. Don't use it.
To Infestation. To Poison Sting. To Ice Fang. There we go. Only took 4. Let's see.
Yeah, Demna247. What this chart is a guide to help you build your team as a starting point. So basically, on the top, it shows the different categories of starters. And so they've sort of grouped it as you could go with one of the grass types. You could go with one of the fire types. You could go with Blastoise or Swampert. They've foregone Empoleon, Infernape, and I'm sure I'm missing something, but
they missed Torterra. They missed Typhlosion.
Yeah, on purpose. So they've just kind of determined those aren't as great as some of the ones
And
that
for Alligator.
And so on the bottom, you have the different categories, right? So all of them have a 1 on the upper left-hand corner. And then the others have, like, for example, a 3 or a 4, a 2, a 4 or a 5. And so what that means is they're choosing one of the categories on the bottom. So, for example, in the Venusaur, Meganium, Sceptile grouping, the 1 would be one of those. And then the 3 or the 4 would be choose a Mud Boy or a Rock Water type. So, for example, you could choose a Relicanth to pair up with your Venusaur. And then you could choose a 4 or a 5. You could choose maybe like a Venomoth. and then you could choose a 5 or a 6. Maybe you could choose like a Sunny Cast form, you know. So it's kind of a way to help you start with something.
Definitely a solid starting point if you have no idea what's going on with it and you don't know what to work with.
Yeah, notice how all of them recommend 8. All of them recommend a dragon type for team building.
And all of them technically recommend a grass type as well.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know if I'm going to get any more challengers tonight. So
I'll challenge you.
You'll challenge me. All right.
The final battle. This is it. This is the moment we've been waiting for.
I don't know what team you're going to have, but just throw some.
Neither do I. That's a fun one.
He leads with a Sudowoodo.
Oh, actually, speaking of Sudowoodo, about a week ago, there was a rank 1 called out in our in Montreal. Hit was a wild spawn at 1500 exactly, and it already hit counter and Stone Edge.
Beautiful. Did you
And I
catch
was
it?
a couple of blocks away from it. So yes, I caught it. Ooh, shiny shelter, maybe? No.
One thing I don't think we've talked about yet, but I've been thinking about it, is if anybody ends up running or opting to use any kind of double or even triple dragon strategies, that might be, even just another reason you're going to want to run Ice Fang on a Drapion if you bring a Drapion. You don't necessarily want to sacrifice any of your other team composition by, running double ice, like bringing Celio and Lapras or Lapras and Castform. That Ice Fang on the Drapion gives the flexibility of, potentially still having an answer to those double dragon strats or triple dragon strats. I think that's something good to note. Definitely.
Definitely is interesting. It's something else to consider. But also in that regard, you could be running, what is it? Empoleon as well. I mean, you saw how it handled, so to speak, Dragonair, but it could do decently well against the double dragon team in general. I mean, not ideal, and probably wouldn't waste my starter type pick on it, but could be worth a look.
Did you get my battle request?
I did. I'm trying to pick a team of random things.
Awesome.
And the thing I like most about TImless is that for anybody that does auto-rec battles or auto-recommended battles, 9 times out of 10, you're going to have at least 1, if not 2, TImless viable picks in your 3. If you played through most of Season 1.
Well, it's a pretty open meta.
Right. And also most of the Pokemon that are meta, so to speak, have been in past cuts, whether front runners or just side pieces.
Yoda Vic PvP, careful with what you wish for. If you offer triple waters, we have
Ooh.
someone here on stream that would get really excited about that.
Yeah. About that.
Yeah, dragons were OP in the old days, without fairy, especially without any. I mean, not without steel as well. Dragon was it was unresisted in the original games.
Let's go 1, 2, and
I don't feel like not a way to deal with them.
What did you say?
I don't feel like they're that overwhelming.
Yeah.
In the match, of course, but it's not somewhat of I don't want to participate unless just because dragons rule the world and I don't have any of them to start us to get them.
Man, Beagle, if you take any longer, this battle is going to drop.
I'm trying my best. That's what happens when you have Hangout running as well as screen share.
I've been stuck. I don't even remember what I picked.
I'm trying to pick a third and I can't even get out of the screen.
No, I still just I don't feel like Venusaur is as dominant as the rankings might suggest. Especially, given everything we're talking about tonight with the the ice and the poisons, even, considering the fires, but even setting the fires aside, if you opt for a poison instead. I guess the plus he has being part poison is it's not going to be as threatening to him, but in other matchups, I feel like I would just either run a Razor Leafer and not use Grass for a starter role, or just be super ballsy and go for Meganium.
Yeah. Man, though, like, Sludge Bomb hurts if you hit it on, like, a Charizard or something. That's it's a pretty hard counter, but Chief Buddington saying that starters seem more like a liability. I could see that. I
could see that too.
But, like, would you run a team without starters? Some of them are pretty good. So I guess we'll wrap it up. Katie in the background, been very quiet. Thank you so much for hosting the stream. It's super appreciated. It's kind of like those silent heroes we have in the background. Thank you, Tristan, although he logged out early. We won't forgive him, but we are appreciative. B-Gold, again, thanks again for the battles, for spending your dust, and for not ringing our ears too much on the water propaganda. It's always appreciated. And Jay, man, I'm just happy that we're not seeing any Kangaskhan in this meta, because that way we don't have to hear about it, right?
Yeah, right.
But thanks again, and it's just been a good time looking at this early look, and it's always interesting going back on these streams, seeing how they compare to the later of the month, kind of towards the beginning of December, how much the meta has evolved. So with that, I'll wrap it up, and I'll leave it to MissMystic if you want to raid, or if you want to give any shout outs.
For sure. Thanks, everybody. Toodles.
Yep. Thanks.
We're going to go ahead and raid Dark Matter Wolf. Playing Pokemon. Thanks for tuning in, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Katie.
And once again, do check out Jay Devin's YouTube channel. Puts out some really awesome content. Definitely worth the check.
And he's now part of the Go Stadium team as well, working on our videos. So he's going to be putting out Go Stadium.
Check out the Go Stadium YouTube channel.
Rating. Here we go.